everybody. Welcome to the fourth and final workshop. I am so sad that this is our final workshop, but I'm so excited for you all to jump into this final workshop. We've got a lot to cover this evening. We've got an amazing guest speaker for you this evening. I think you're going to really enjoy this. Now, this workshop is all about how to make the most out of that first internship. How do you make the most of that first internship or first job? Maybe you're jumping into a full-time job, you're a senior, you're graduating. Maybe you're hopefully jumping into an internship. Even if you're not jumping into an internship, maybe you're working on a part-time job. That's okay too. This workshop is all about how can you make the most out of that first opportunity so that you can really set yourself apart. By the way, if you have a part-time job and you don't have an internship, there are plenty of ways that you can go about setting yourself apart in that part-time job that could lead to internships down the road. Seriously, do not settle and do not sell yourself short for the network that you could create from any particular opportunity. I know that I could tell you that back in the day when I was a server and bartender, I met plenty of people that ultimately opened up doors for opportunities that I ended up taking advantage of later. You never know who you will meet, even in the jobs you think are not your main thing. It's understandable, but leverage it. Don't ever write any potential connection off. So, as you all know, my name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. This workshop's going to be about 50 minutes long. Please ask any questions you have. If you have any questions in the comments section, as you all know, I'm gonna ask 3 questions during the duration of this workshop. Your job is to answer them within 24 hours of this workshop going live. I don't necessarily know exactly what the questions are going to be. I always prompt them based on our guest speaker. Sometimes I'll slip in an intro question during this segment here. It just depends how I'm feeling for the day. So I'm so excited for you all to jump in, learn from our guest this evening. I'm so excited to learn your answers to the questions that we ask you, and I'm so excited to engage with you all. Now, I really want to set the expectations. As you all know, you're not going to get an internship handed to you on a silver platter. That's just not how this program works. Now, by the way, have students landed opportunities at Google, major investment banks, major engineering firms, major marketing firms? Absolutely, happens all the time. And have they done that as a result of meeting with their mentor, taking advantage of the things that they've learned through this program? Yeah, absolutely. But if you think this is going to get handed to you on a silver platter, I think you already know by now that's just not how this program works. You have to work for the things that you get. Now, this platform can be a springboard for you to get to where you want to be. Leverage this as an opportunity to really launch your early career path. Absolutely, yes, this is something that can really do make a huge impact on you getting to where you want to be. But this is not a handout. This is not something that is just given to you. This program could be critical to you really setting yourself apart compared to your peers. Take advantage of it. I really think that you're going to enjoy what we have to say in this workshop this evening. Now, I really want to talk about the intentionality of feelings, because here's the thing. At the end of the day, how you make someone feel in a given moment is going to really impact how they feel about you down the line. So I want you to just take a quick moment on a piece of paper or on your phone. I want you to identify, how do you want other people to feel about you? So when you're going into that first job, that first internship, that first part-time job, how do you want your boss? How do you want your colleagues? How do you want your peers? How do you want other people to feel about you? Write it in the comment section. Write it down on a piece of paper. I want to know, how do you want other people to feel about you? Because that intentionality is so key. It is so key, because here's the thing. If you don't write this down, if you don't set out an intention for how you want other people to feel about you, they are going to perceive you in any which way that you may feel on that given day. And that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. If you're having an off day and you're thinking to yourself like, oh man, I'm having a rough day, you can let that spew onto other people. It happens all the time. And people come up with excuses for it. You might say, hey, my dog died earlier today, or I just found out my grandma's got cancer, having a rough day. And don't get me wrong, there's not an excuse for having a rough day, but you've got to be able to realize that as a professional, you've got to put on multiple different hats to get yourself in the zone to make the most out of it. So no matter what's going on with your world, you can't let your personal world affect your business world. And if you do, it's going to potentially negatively impact the way that other people feel about you. But if you set an intention right now about how you want other people to feel about you, you're going to put yourself in a much better situation. If you think to yourself, I want people to think about me as dependable and reliable and someone that's always upbeat, confident, and excited when it comes to work, It doesn't matter what's going on with your outside world. Even if the worst thing could have possibly happened in your outside personal world, if you set yourself an intention right now that that's how you want other people to feel about you, when you come into work, you're going to straighten yourself up because you've already identified, I don't want people to feel sad, bad, or like that I'm a charity case because I've got other things going on in my outside world. You want other people to feel like you are a rock, that you are someone that they can go to, that you are someone that's always showing up professionally. Boom. You will get yourself into the mindset ready to be successful. Now that leads to the 3 keys that we cover in every workshop for success in this mentor program, which is strategy, story, and state. And as I just said, it doesn't matter what's going on in your outside world. It doesn't matter what the state of the world is. If you are a rock, if you are someone that physically comes into a state conducive for being successful every single time, you will be successful. I promise you that. So I want to do right now is I want to get you into a state conducive for being successful. I want you to stand up and I want you to shake it loose. I want you to shimmy it out. I want you to let it go. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. On the count of 3, scream 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Just let it out. Let it loose. Let it go. You're getting yourself pumping. You're getting blood flowing to your brain. You're releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself ready to be successful. The reason why that is so key is because no matter what is going on in your world, you can drive your emotions with your motions. Your motions drive your emotions, meaning that if you get out, you move, you do a power pose, you get crazy, you can get yourself in a state conducive for other people wanting to be around you. You can get yourself feeling good, even if you don't want to feel good. Even if you think to yourself, I just want to remorse for a little bit. I just want to be sad for a little bit. You can be sad on your own time, but when it comes to work time, you step your game up. And the way that you step your game up, you get your emotions and you turn them into positive emotions. I can tell you that right now. Even when you don't want to feel on your best self, your emotions can get yourself into an emotional state conducive for being successful, even if it's only for a temporary period of time. I promise you, your emotions, getting moving, getting running, getting going, getting just shaken out, will get yourself successful. And that will be a huge catalyst for you being successful on the job, standing apart from other people. Because everyone else is going to wonder, like, man, how are you able to stay upbeat, positive, just like a go-to person every single time while other people are taking sick days or just having off days? And you can tell, everyone can tell. It's because you are making an intention to be that way before you come into work every single day. It's critical. Now, the next key is your story. What's the story you tell yourself? Now, that's a big point of the intentionality. What is the story you tell yourself for why you're going to be successful? If you're telling yourself a negative story like, hey, you know what, I don't deserve to be here, I'm not qualified, I'm just honestly, I don't even know why I'm in the room. If that's the story you tell yourself, that is the outcome that will be perceived by other people. But if you tell yourself a story, man, I can do this, I can make an impact, I can learn from these people, I can engage, I can be the energetic person who does what it takes, works the hardest to get to where I need to be. If you come in with that mentality, you can be successful. Now, the last key is your strategy. What are you going to do to make sure that you set yourself apart from your peers? Now, there's a few things that we talk about with our guest speaker, but there's a few things that I would love to discuss with you right now. The first one is what is focal is causal. This is popularized by the work of Dr. Robert Cialdini. Essentially, what it means is that whatever is seen is perceived, which means that it is all optics. By that, I mean, if your supervisor, if your boss, if your CEO sees you showing up early for work, working hard on projects, taking initiative, they will attribute the success of the entire intern team to you. But if they see you on your phone, on social media, doing something lazy, just doing things that are not, like spreading gossip at the water cooler, not working when you should be working, anything that could be perceived as negative, if they see that, they will perceive that just as likely as they do the hardworking stuff. So it is really critical that whatever people see about you, whoever you want to make sure that you impress, that they see the type of person that you want to portray, and that they do not see the type of person you do not want to portray. You will think to yourself, man, I wonder how does XYZ person get promoted over another person? I can tell you how. It's that they are seen doing good work while the other people are not seen doing good work. Make sure that you're seen doing good work. In fact, what I always find the most interesting about this research of Dr. Robert Cialdini is its extrapolation to other areas of life. Specifically, as you know, I don't know if any of you all are holed up right now for coronavirus and sitting inside watching television, but what he's observed in his research is that when cameras, especially in police interrogations, are facing any particular person, whether that be the police officer or the suspect, when the camera is facing the person, one particular person, a jury is much more likely to attribute negative feelings towards that person if the camera is facing them. So if the camera is facing a suspect in an interrogation, the jury is much more likely to attribute guilt on the party of the suspect than they are to think that the cop is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually exist. However, flip it around. When the camera is facing the police officer, not the suspect, the likelihood that the jury is going to think that the cop, the police officer, is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually be essentially the guilt of the person who's under interrogation, it essentially increases substantially more. The point I'm trying to make is that when what people see is what they perceive. So at the end of the day, if God forbid you're ever in a police interrogation situation and you notice that the camera is rolling, at the best you want to make sure that the camera is side by side equally to you both, or not facing you and facing the police officer. It's crazy how much of an impact that has on how people perceive other people. But more importantly, as it pertains to the workplace, make sure that people see you doing good work and not see you doing bad work. It's not a tit for tat type of thing. One bad deed is about 10 good deeds worth. You have to really make sure that you're not seen doing anything bad, or you are going to be on the shit list of your supervisor. And that's not a place you want to be. So the next thing that I want to talk about is this theory called the next in line theory. Essentially what this says is that when somebody is talking or about to speak, their likelihood of retaining any information before or after their speech is very low. So if you know that your supervisor is about to give a presentation, or someone that you really look up to, maybe you are about to see a keynote speaker, you're thinking to yourself, I love this keynote speaker, I love what he or she has to say, I want to go up to him or her after their speech. Bad idea. Here's why. People, when they speak, are much more likely to think about what they just said if they just finished giving a speech, or what they're about to say if they're about to give a speech. Their likelihood of retaining any new information is very minimal. So therefore, you need to give the person you're trying to make a positive impression to a leeway period before you bring up new information to them, because that will increase the likelihood that your message is actually going to resonate in their mind. But if you come up to them right before a speech or right after a speech that they just gave or are about to give, their likelihood of remembering what you said, very low. So just something to keep in mind. This also applies to a boss who's giving a speech, any colleague that's giving a speech, anybody who's about to speak publicly for anything. Make sure you don't talk to them immediately before or afterwards, because they're not going to remember what you said. So the last thing that I want to touch on is this concept called matching and mirroring. This is a great key for building rapport in the workplace, especially for someone who's got negative body language. So I think we've touched on this before in the past, but you should not have your arms crossed when you're at the workplace. It conveys that you're closed off and that you're not open to learning new information. But there's a lot of people that have bad body language in the workplace. There's going to be a lot of people that will cross their arms to you. Can you cross back? The answer is yes. And I know this might sound crazy, but people feel a subconscious connection to others that they are similar to. And this can be in your mannerisms and your speed of speech. Not your dialect of speech, but your speed of speech. So if somebody has a very thick Southern accent and you try to emulate that Southern accent, but you don't actually have a Southern accent, they're going to sniff that out immediately. It's going to be perceived as inauthentic. But if someone's talking really quickly and you're saying, I'm going to work on that, boss, I'm going to make sure I get that done, I'm going to work on it right away, they're going to think to themselves like, man, here's a sense of urgency, someone who's really with it. That's awesome. But instead, if you respond by saying, yeah, boss, I will get to it, and I will make sure that I get those assignments complete, they're going to be thinking to themselves, what the heck is wrong with this kid? Like, what does he not like get it? The sense of urgency? It's crazy how your speed of speech is actually perceived so similar together. So if you notice that someone talks really quickly or really slowly, following their speed of speech, matching and mirroring their speed of speech can actually help you build rapport with them. The other key is other body language. So like I said, crossing your arms. If someone's playing with their chin, you can play with your chin. Don't try to be overly obvious about it, but you can do it subtly. So if someone's playing with their ear, you can play with your ear. And I know it may sound crazy, but you can try this with a friend who's never heard this before. Go up to them, see if they've got any mannerisms. Maybe they're using their hands like this a lot. Emulate those hand gestures, and then all of a sudden introduce a new gesture. All of a sudden, maybe start playing with your nose. It could be any gesture, honestly. Start playing with your nose. Do it. First, emulate their hand gestures for about 5 minutes. Then introduce a new gesture. Watch what happens. They're going to start playing with their nose. They're going to start emulating the new gesture that you have now introduced. It's crazy. It's fascinating how it works, but it builds rapport between other people in the work environment. I think those are some really critical tips for you to know. The last thing that I want to leave you with is the 30 and 90-day rule. The 30-day rule is for an internship. When you first get into an internship, this is, by the way, this was, by the way, a Fortune 500 CEO taught me this tip, and that was when you first go into an internship, meet with your supervisor and ask him or her the question, what did the best intern you ever have do to set themselves apart? On the very first day, ask that question. They're going to tell you exactly what they want you to do to set yourself apart. For the next 30 days, go ahead and do it. Don't complain. Don't ask questions. Don't share any professional goals you've got for yourself. Just go ahead, put your head down, work hard. After 30 days, you have built credibility with this person. You can then say, hey, boss, would you be open to having a conversation? I would love to share with you some of my professional goals. Boom. That's where you share some of your professional goals. That's where you say, hey, I'm interested in connecting with people in these areas or these types of fields or these types of industries. And because you've earned credibility, they will help you get there. Why? Because you've earned that credibility. But if on day one you ask for that and you've earned no credibility, they're not going to do it. Or if they do, they're going to only do it on a light version. You're not going to get the full force of how they could possibly help connect you. That is something that's really critical. 90-day rule is the exact same thing, but for a full-time job, you get a little bit longer to really build that credibility with your supervisor and your employer. So those are key tips. The last thing I want to just really mention is really starting to help you get into a routine. I know that the best way to learn anything is to actually teach it. So what I want you to do is I want you to find somebody. This could be a friend. It could be a peer. It could be a classmate. It could be anybody. Teach them something that you learned in this program. Teach them anything you learned in this program. We know that students who tell at least, we know that students who tell at least 20 people something that they learned in this program, that their likelihood of landing the job, the internship, getting to a graduate degree increases exponentially. We know that the more people a student tells, the more likely they're able to do that. What we've identified as 20 is that magic number. And this doesn't necessarily have to be you teaching them a full seminar of anything we taught. It could be literally you bringing up casually in conversation, like, hey, I learned about this thing called matching and mirroring. It's really fascinating. Boom, that's it. That's one person. Or multiple people if you're in a group. But what we've learned is that the more people you tell, the more likely you are actually going to retain this information, the more likely you are going to actually apply it into your professional life, and the more likely you are actually to achieve the goals you have set for yourself professionally. It's crazy how it works. It's a network effect. It really does make an impact. So I want to challenge you that after this workshop, you go out, you identify a friend, you teach them something you learned in this program, and its likelihood of sticking increases exponentially. I really want to challenge you to do that. I would really encourage you to be in the program next semester. You're going to get a new mentor. We're going to have new speakers. We're going to talk about new content. I think you're going to really enjoy it and really springboard your career into another level. I think you're going to really enjoy that. Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of this workshop. I look forward to seeing you on the next part. Welcome to our workshop this evening. I'm really excited to dive into our topic. We're here to talk about how to make the most out of that first job or internship. So we've gone through the program so far this semester, and we're working on ways that we can leverage our mentor and put ourselves in the best position to thrive in our career path. And obviously with this COVID situation we're in, there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and that's to be expected. That's normal. But really, we want to equip you with some tools and tactics that you can leverage so then you can make the most out of that first job, that first internship, and set yourself apart. Tonight, we've got an incredible guest with us. Our guest is David Fisher. David Fisher is the Chief Revenue Officer for Gregory and Appel Insurance. David's specialty is in transforming organizations into market leaders that deliver sustained growth and profitability. He's started, built, and grown multiple organizations and is the epitome of taking ownership of your career. David, thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, thanks for the introduction, Garrett. Thank you for the invite. I'm excited to participate and share some insight.
That's awesome. I love to maybe first get started. I know I kind of gave an intro of you, but I'd love if you could just briefly share with the students that are watching this tonight a little bit of your background and how you got into the work that you're doing. I think for a lot of business students, we hear the term chief revenue officer, we hear these terms chiefs, like how do we become a chief in our own career? How do we work up to that level? How does that, from the very start to the point that you're at now, how do we get to that position within our life and in our career?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had, a really blessed and a really diverse career. So by education, economics and marketing major, but I was getting toward the end of graduating from college and decided that I wasn't quite ready to hunker on down in the business world. So I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps as an active duty officer, and just obviously a lifelong amount of training and lessons learned, was able to pull from that, a tremendous amount of maturing that got pulled out of that 8 years. Did everything from supply, finance, and logistics, so I actually got to use my career, and then did, for my combat billets, infantry and parachute operations. So really had a really blessed and fun career. Got to that 8-year point, my wife and I decided that all those was really and fun, this was just not what we wanted to do for a lifelong career. So at that point, I transitioned out of the military, and I spent a little more than 13 years in the public sector. So these are large publicly traded companies, all multi-billion-dollar companies. And I focused in on the high-tech arena, both software side as well as the hardware side, with the eventual goal of, at least at that point in my life, I had aspirations of eventually becoming a VP of sales. And I had the opportunity, I wasn't necessarily looking for it, but I had an opportunity to step out of the public sector and went into the private sector, and have now spent about 14 years in the private sector, really helping organizations either do product launches, either market penetrations, financial recoveries, or going through some kind of transition that they needed to go through. And what I found out, the difference between that large publicly traded company versus the smaller privately held companies, is that we get to feel the impacts of our decisions almost immediately in that much, much smaller company. So either good or bad, when you make those decisions and the ramifications that come along with them, we would feel those effects right away. And I really love to feel that immediate gratification and input of how we can change organizations and how organizations can move through that change process. And then really, as that transition happened from leading sales organizations to then also leading through a myriad of different financial recoveries and doing some M&A work, that's when that CRO role started to kind of come in vogue. And if you think about organizationally, if you go back 6-7 years ago, traditionally you had a CEO, COO, and a CFO, and every now and then you have a CIO, and then you'd have an EVP of sales, so that executive vice president. But you never had that equal stance of customer acquisition, customer nurture, customer retain on that executive level table. Even though you had that EVP, still a different title and definitely a different stature that comes with an EVP versus a C-level title. And then some organizations started to backfill that with a CMO, so a chief marketing officer, or a CSO, which would be classified as a chief sales officer. And what a chief revenue officer brings to the table is that core responsibility of anything and everything to do with revenue generation, not just sales generation. So what I focus in on is making sure that the products, services, and customers that we bring in-house are not only customers that we want to have, but we can operate in a way that we can scale, we can institutionalize, and then obviously we can generate revenue out of it. So it's not just the importance of the top sale, which is, it's not just from the marketing, from a customer acquisition side of it and customer nurture side, but how can we make sure that we drive revenue sustainability in our organizations, which obviously goes toward the overall profitability. And there is no dirty word with saying we are in this business to make money, because ultimately every business must be in business to make money. So some of those chief differentiations between a chief revenue officer and some of the other ones, my sole focus, energy, and effort and attention is spent on how do I generate the most amount of revenue for my organization.
That's a great point that you bring up. I think that that's a fine balance. I think that as a lot of college students, we're here thinking about ourselves and thinking about our careers. It's like, okay, I want to go and maybe we want to go ahead and make an impact. And we think to ourselves that we can either only make an impact or we can only make money. But I think what you are really creating a true testament of is that we can do both. We can make an impact and we can make money. And in fact, I'll extrapolate a little bit further. I would care to argue that the more money you make, the more impact you can make, because the more money you have, the more resources you can leverage to impact more people. So I think that they are not diabolically opposed. In fact, that they're really aligned with each other. And that leads to really my first main question is, how can a student properly set their expectations for their career, for their internship? I mean, you talked about how you were in the Marines, and then that leveraged you to getting into sales and then becoming an EVP of sales and then going to the private sector and then becoming the chief revenue officer. It sounds a lot smoother than it probably actually was. What can a student do now to properly set their expectations to best prepare for that first job or internship and be intentional about where they like to be, but also being open to the changes, the twists and turns of what might be thrown at them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, from the time that I graduated in college until we are now, I mean, I'd have to count the years up, but it's probably somewhere in that 28-year period in order to get to this position here where I could not only in conscious, apply for a CEO role, which I've done before, or a chief revenue officer role, which I've now done twice, because you have to have that credibility and you have to have that experience in order to get there. So is when I'm talking to either A, students, or we also bring in interns in the last several companies that I've worked with, I've always challenged them with, you need to be thinking about what does your career look like, and this is going to sound like a long time, but it's not. What does your career look like and where do you want to be in the next 15 to 20 years? Even if you said, I don't necessarily know the sector. I don't necessarily know exactly the geography. I don't necessarily know the exact company, because of which I certainly didn't have, even when I was coming out of the Marine Corps. I always knew in the back of my head that I wanted to be a leader. And there's a very distinct difference between being an individual contributor, which there's no harm and no foul, and certainly no shame in that, as well as wanting to be a leader. Because being a leader, just as being an individual contributor, is a conscious decision and a choice. But I always knew that I wanted to be a leader, and I eventually certainly said I also wanted to stay in that sales arena, marketing arena, or revenue arena. And then just because of my interest in it, I predominantly stayed in the high-tech sector, both in the software as well as the hardware side. But certainly, given over a 28-year career path, it certainly has ebbed and flowed as we've gone through those things. But I would say from a long-term perspective, know what you want out of your career aspirations so that you know as you're making your moves from either internal transitions and promotions or lateral moves or external ones, you know that you're taking your next job, you know that you're taking your next opportunity, because it's a stepping stone and a building block to get you where you eventually want to be. Because again, I think too many times people will look at any career of either an executive or somebody that's in that senior leadership position and say, hey, I'm ready for that now and I can get in there. No, it takes a long time to go through that, and it takes a lot of planning and intentionality to be ready for that. So again, having that long-term vision of where you eventually want to be, even with some question marks around it or some unknowns around it, gives you the foundational building blocks of where and how to guide your career. Because again, a CRO is very different than a CIO, which is very different than a COO, which is very different than somebody that says, you know what, I want to be a lifelong coder. No harm, no foul. I want to be a lifelong sales rep. No harm, no foul. Those are career decisions. But you have to make those decisions early on so you know how to build your career. You know what career moves to make, so you know where you want to get to in that 15 to 20-year period.
Let's talk about that for a second, because this is not a question I had, I guess, prepared, but I think it's very relevant to what we're talking about right now. But what are the implications of those decisions? What is the implication of pursuing a leadership position versus pursuing an individual contributor position, and how might that affect me, not only from a financial perspective, but from a type of work perspective and change and potentially kind of laying out my own career path? What kind of implications would that entail?
It's going to have multitudes of implications that go along with it. And when I talk to younger people in their career, or students starting on embarking on their career, leadership has almost got to be one of those callings that you're going to want to go through. In most instances, as a leader, there is higher risk that goes with that leadership role, because now you become responsible, and you are responsible for all of those people that you are now working with, cultivating, developing, and coaching. And you've got an obligation, you've got a responsibility to help those people, to develop those people above and beyond your own needs. So leadership to me, much like even serving in the military or serving in healthcare or serving in law enforcement or serving in any of those self-serving ventures that go through, it's got to be a calling that says, I'm willing and I want to be part of something much greater than myself. And I'm willing to give up aspects of what maybe are most comfortable for me in order to help a team, in order to help a cause, in order to help a process. Now, in that same tune, for those people that want to be individual contributors, that doesn't mean that they are selfish. It doesn't mean that they are solely self-serving on their own. It just means that your primary responsibility is you and your actions and your obligations and your responsibilities and your deliverables to your organization or to your association or toward your environment that you are supporting. But again, that leadership has got to be a calling. So again, if you eventually want to be a leader, you have to put yourself in a position in taking those leadership roles, learning on how to be a leader, because again, learning how to be a leader is a skill set like anything else. I can't think of anybody that would say, hey, I've just been born a leader and I know all these skills. You have to then also want to be a student of leadership, really indefinitely and for your entire life. I've never stopped learning on how to be a better learner. Or be a better leader. I've never stopped learning on how to accept feedback in order so I can better serve the people that I'm in charge of and those that I want to see develop and get better.
That's awesome. No, that's great. I think that's really good insight. I want to take a moment to ask the students a question real quick who are watching this. Where do you see yourself in 15 to 20 years? I know that seems like very much far off in terms of your life, but I'd love to see where you would like to see yourself in the next 15 to 20 years. And it doesn't need to be super specific, but at least if you got some form of intentionality, some form of idea of where you'd like to be, whether you'd like to be an individual contributor, a leader, in a certain industry or certain function within the business. I just would love to learn about that. Post in the comments section. I'd love to learn about where you see yourself in 15 to 20 years. I think that'll be really helpful. And I think it'd be also helpful to see what other students are pursuing in their 15 to 20 year goal, because I don't think there's a wrong goal that you can have, but if you're thinking about it, that at least can get you started on this path of what do I want to do? Where do I want to be? What are the steps that I need to take right now to put myself on that path? I think that's really great insight. I mean, I would imagine there's a lot of people that maybe when they were younger thought to themselves, I wanted to be in this maybe C-suite leadership type of role, but then never took steps towards actually getting there. And they never set that intention in 15 to 20 years that they'd be there. And then all of a sudden they're in their 50s and they think to themselves, well, shoot, I'm still this individual contributor. Am I doing the work I want to do? Not to say it's wrong or it's right, but if you want to set this intention, now is a great time to set that and start thinking about the steps that you may want to take to get yourself to that point. So I'd love to ask a different question, but I think relevant to identifying where we want to be in the next 15 to 20 years is stress. As the new person coming into a job or an internship, I'm probably going to be facing a lot of new circumstances. What is your advice for a student and how to handle stress on the job or at work so then they can put themselves in the best position to thrive and succeed and not let it inhibit their performance?
Yeah, that's something that, everybody deals with, right? And that's nothing that, eventually goes away. Life in itself is just a stressful sequence of events. And then certainly, the events of the past year have just nothing more than really amplified that for a myriad of different reasons across the board. And everybody manages and handles, stress differently. Some handle it better, some handle it worse. But everybody has stress in their life. So again, I would always caution people, before you look up around and say, oh my gosh, my neighbor just doesn't feel stressed, or hey, this other student's not feeling stressed, or hey, it's always coming so easy for everybody else. I'd have to backtrack and go, that's just not true. Everybody has stress in their lives. So one, you got to learn how to manage that stress, and you also have to learn on how you react within stressful scenarios and within stressful situations as well, and then find out what those release mechanisms are for you to help calm that mind or help calm that stress, because stress is not going to go away. And then, like Garrett mentioned at the beginning as well, understanding how you manage your stress is just as important as understanding how and where you want to take your career so you make those right moves. How you handle stress and how you manage stress can also help guide and direct what are the best career choices for you. If you are somebody that is exceptionally stressed in very safe environments, taking high-risk jobs where there are high-risk rewards and high-risk consequences that go with it, probably not a great choice for a career path for you. Just as it is to be an understanding of, I'm somebody that, if you are mindset of, I'm somebody that enjoys stress, I enjoy high risk, I enjoy the high reward, you're probably not going to want to go do something that is very, very calm and something that wouldn't be necessarily the rewards that you have. But then also, just as importantly, find out where those release points are. What helps calm your stress points, whether it be working out, whether it be logging and documenting or journaling, or whether it be writing, whether it be walking, whether it be mentoring, whether it be doing yoga. Find what those release points are, because like I said before, stress is not going to go away. As we all live through our lives, there's always going to have some component of stress, personally, financially, physically, professionally. That's just the world that we live in today. Learning how to deal with that and learning what your stress triggers are and what your stress thresholds are. Some people high thresholds, some people low thresholds, and how to manage that is just as important as how to manage your career.
And stress can be a good thing. And in fact, I'd care to argue stress is a good thing. If you're not stressed out about anything, you're too comfortable. Your life is boring. It's not going anywhere. If there's nothing that is stressing you out on any level whatsoever, you're not growing. Because ultimately, in order for us to innovate in our own lives, in order for us to grow or get to any position in life or we're aspiring to anything, it entails facing some form of discomfort. And that discomfort is what breeds the opportunity for us to grow, which also breeds our stress. But I love what you had to say about managing the stress, because I think athletics can be a great outlet, or one, it can be a great outlet, and it's a very healthy outlet for managing your stress, because it can help you get into a clearer mind state about how you can just better prepare yourself for any situation. It's so much better than perhaps resorting to drugs or alcohol, because that is going to continue making your life more stressful, because it's not putting your body into a position conducive for handling stress. So it's almost it's a reoccurring cycle if we are handling our stress with potentially negative outlets. So I think suggesting exercise is a great idea. And also recognize that things can change. I know for me, I moved to Austin, Texas in June during the pandemic, and I've never had any sort of, I don't know, depression, I guess you'd say. But when I moved to Austin, I didn't have any friends. I'm a sociable person. I like to meet people. And about a month and a half in, I felt a little lonely. I was like, you know what? I don't know anybody, and I can't really socialize because everyone's social distancing. So I felt a little lonely, but I could at least acknowledge it and start being more active about reaching out to people, making friends, and doing what we can in a socially distanced manner. But the point I'm making is that it's okay for things to change. If things that previously didn't stress you out or didn't necessarily inhibit you in the past, they might inhibit you in the future, and that's okay. But acknowledging it is a great way to overcome it, and then taking steps towards rectifying that situation is also helpful too.
Yes. And you bring up a really great point. We talked about, career pathing and what that looks like, and setting the right milestones on that. Just as important to identify whether I want to be in leadership, or I want to be an individual contributor, or I want to be an entrepreneur. That also tails into different jobs, roles, and responsibilities that go along with that as well. If you are not somebody that enjoys stress or enjoys that feeling of good pressure, there are certain jobs that would not be a great fit for you. And we've got 5 children. My oldest daughter actually came to me one point several years ago, and she goes, "Oh my God, Dad, I would hate your job. I would hate your job every day with the amount of pressure, the amount of stress that is loaded up on you, the amount of work that you need to do. I would hate that job." And her job, and again, I take nothing away from data analysts and data input people, because we need people that love to do that. She goes, "I love my job. I go to my cubicle, I input data all day, nobody talks to me, and that's my day." And I would think of that and I would go, "Oh my God, I could do that for 10 minutes. That would stress me out." So it's really important to understand what those stress triggers are, and then what those stress thresholds are for you, because that's just as important to know. If you're not somebody that enjoys that positive pressure, that doesn't enjoy those good stresses, as Garrett says, that helps motivate us and help encourages you and helps light that fire within inside you, there are certain jobs that are not a great fit for that.
On this topic, more on the physical, not necessarily on the physical side, it could be any component. Is there a routine that you subscribe to that just helps you get going for the day? Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be a morning routine. Maybe it could be an evening routine. But do you have any routines that you follow that help you get into the zone to prepare for work and making the most out of your work circumstance and situation?
Yeah, I would say, and the routines obviously change as I've gone through, different careers in different industries. But, at a macro level, I always tell people, we live, very imbalanced lives throughout our lives, but the most important thing is to try to find as much balance as you possibly can. So, there are certain times in any one of our lives that your work is going to mandate and dictate that your work is going to have to take priority right now, and that's what you need to do. And there's certainly times in life where family needs are going to dictate that work is going to have to go on the back burner and family is going to have to now take the primary focus. But you as an individual and the things that you get to control, I'd say one of the things that I have really found for me that helps keep me rooted, that helps keeps me balanced, that helps keeps me even mentally sharp is finding that physical activity that lets me break away, that lets me put the cell phone down and lets me find that meditation time or lets me find that quiet time. So when I am stressed, I can then take that time as I'm working out to think about more openly and a little less objectively of how do I want to solve that problem. So for me, my routine that I make sure I get in, multiple workouts throughout the week. And I generally start my mornings with my morning yoga, my morning stretch, and my morning meditation on not only what's going on in my life right now, but what are the most pressing priorities, either personally or professionally, that I want to be able to then focus on. So that when I do go to work, I then can give my work and I can give the people that I support my full attention and my full intentionality on making sure I'm bringing the best version of myself forward. And I have found when I don't find those outlets for me or I don't find the time for that physical outlet, I'm not as sharp as I need to be. I'm not as patient as I need to be, or I'm not as open-minded as I need to be. So for me, I have found that physical balance of making sure that I work hard when I'm at work, as well as finding that personal time for me, and then working out, training because I like to train and work, and then finding those race events to keep me on track with it. That helps me keep my routines in place so that I keep the right priorities in place. So when I'm working, and when I'm on my personal time, I'm on my personal time.
I think that is really valuable. I think there's a lot of power in that. I was reading a book called Atomic Habits, and one of the core tenets of that book is if we can do something consistently every day, we are much more likely to see results in those areas than if we do a big activity one time randomly. And you doing yoga every morning could be it. I know my morning routine is I do something similar. I do a little gratitude meditation every morning, and then I also will do a cold shower where I essentially will fill up a bucket full of ice water and dump it on my head. It just shocks my system and it gets me ready for the day. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but it makes me happy. I don't know. It gets me excited for the day and makes me feel like the day is going to be a good day. But having those routines, whatever it may be, can be so critical for you as a student to prepare for that first job or internship, because that can be your semblance of normalcy, the thing that you can cling to for, I am going to make this day awesome. So with that said, what is a routine that either you currently have or that you would like to have in your daily life? Students, post that in the comment section. I'd love to learn about that, because I think putting it out there can help normalize. And also maybe you learn some other ideas from other students about what their daily morning routine is or what their daily routine is that you think might be interesting or applicable to you that you could apply to your life. I'd love to learn about it. Post in the comment section. So David, I want to dovetail a little bit. I think as students, one of the biggest fears we have is of failure. But sometimes we haven't really fully defined what that means. So in your mind, what is failure to you?
First I would say, embrace the fact that you're going to fail, and just embrace that. And if you're not failing, to a certain extent, you're not trying hard enough, and you're not pushing your boundaries far enough, and you're not challenging yourself enough. You're going to fail. The most critical thing you can do when you fail is learn, and then make sure you don't do those same things or those same mistakes again. It's okay to fail. You're going to fail. Learn how to fail. Learn how to fail successfully. Embrace it, learn, and move on. To me, the biggest failure would be regret. I didn't take the shot I should have. I didn't try the way I should have. I didn't give my best effort. That, to me, would be failure. I don't ever want to, whether it be end of my career or end of my life, not to sound morbid, I don't want to have regrets. I don't want to have misses where I missed because I didn't take the shot. And again, I pick it up from, the great hockey player Wayne Gretzky. I missed every shot I didn't take. Have no regrets. And I know that sounds corny, and I know this sounds simplistic, failure to me is having regrets. Because again, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail throughout your life. Embrace those, learn from those, and then move on.
That's awesome. I think leveraging that within failure is the lessons and the knowledge that we learn from those failures. I mean, the ability to fail allows us to grow as a person. So I guess what I'd be curious to know, David, what motivates you to keep learning? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. You've been growing in your career, but you're constantly, because I know you've got a constant zest for wanting to learn more and wanting to grow yourself. What motivates you to keep wanting to learn more?
I don't know where that comes from, but I would say, from my leadership skill set, and I think anybody that is in a leadership role would tell you that they've been a student of leadership their entire life. You just don't ever stop learning that. And again, whether you are in that leadership role, you're that individual contributor role, just the world we live in, there's always things that we can learn. This world is always evolving. This world is always changing. And not to want to participate in that, or not to want to learn more about that, engage on that, to me would be one of those misses or one of those failure points. So I would say for me, it's that constant desire of not only do I want to, be the best version of myself, I want to be the best version of myself so I can help everybody that I have the opportunity to work with to be the best version of themselves. And whether that's me helping them develop as an individual contributor, or me helping them develop as a leader of their teams, that's what gets me energized. That's what gets me enthused. That's what encourages me to want to continue to learn. And I would say, that then carries over into your personal life as well. I would say I'm constantly wanting to learn more about what I can do to be a better father, a better husband, a better grandfather, as now I've matured into that. What can I do to be a better sibling on that? So again, I wouldn't say that anybody would ever, I would hope nobody would ever say, I'm done learning and I've got nothing left to learn in this world. Because again, this world is constantly evolving. And to me, to not being participative in that would be just a real loss.
That's awesome. I love that perspective. And I think one thing that I'm pulling out of this is that willingness and desire to learn makes you attractive. In the sense that people want to be around those that want to learn. And so as a student, if I'm starting my first job or my first internship, if you've got a boss, you've got a supervisor, you've got a colleague that you feel like is kind of closed off from learning, or just kind of wanting to stick in their own kind of one area and not really explore or learn new things, that can be difficult for you and your ability to grow and thrive. And so perhaps maybe a suggestion for your first job or internship is to seek out those leaders that are at your company that are constantly wanting to learn, constantly wanting to explore new things. And just almost by being around them, you can make yourself, you could raise your own level, you can raise your own standard of excellence. I think the saying is you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so if we can think of ourselves as spending more time with people that are constantly wanting to learn, we and ourselves will almost allow that to rub off on us and allow us to be more eager to learn as well. Would you agree with that, David?
Yeah, I would totally agree here. And again, as you go throughout your career, you're going to have people that you're going to look at and aspire to be and want to emulate, and you're going to be able to pull a lot of positive things off. And you're also going to run into people in your career that you're going to be able to look at and go, not exactly how I want to react, not exactly how I want to respond, not exactly how I want to engage people. And those are important lessons to learn as well. So I've learned just as much from leaders that I don't want to be like, or people that I don't want to be like, as I have from these are the people that I want to emulate. These are the ones that have taught me what I want to be like when I get to be a seasoned and a senior leader.
Yeah. Well, since you've managed multiple interns and multiple employees, I guess I'd love to maybe do like a rapid fire, just kind of learn your perspective on what you feel like the best direct report you've ever had, that you've ever worked with. What did they do to set themselves apart? And what can a student do now to leverage that similar mentality or that similar activity to get themselves in a similar position? What was something that somebody you worked with that reported to you that you felt like, man, this person went above and beyond and really just impressed me? What can a student do to emulate that sort of behavior?
Yeah, I would say, a real quick answer to that, again, whether you are an intern or you're brand new into the workforce here, or now you're even a seasoned professional, in my mind, there is no shortcut to hard work. There is no shortcut to all-out effort. And so what grabs my attention is that when I see people that are willing to put in the time, energy, perseverance, and energy to be good at their craft, and whatever that craft is, right? Whether it be an individual contributor, whether it be service-related, whether it be as in a leadership role, put time, energy, perseverance, and energy into your craft, and always wanting to continue to improve. Kind of going back toward the question you just asked me of what energizes and what gets me going about wanting to learn. It's also being around people that want to watch and learn and grow and develop. And I predominantly right now, all of my direct reports are all, 15 to 18 year plus seasoned professionals. And all of them are still want to learn. All of them are still interested in engaging. All of them still want to be informed and leading the way, not only for their teams, but leading the way for the industry discussions that they have. And that grabs attention, that grabs notice. So as an intern coming in or a new employee coming right out of college, don't be afraid to put in that work. Don't be afraid to put in that extra energy, and not just work for work's sake. There definitely is a mentality of, yes, work harder, work smarter, not harder, but don't be afraid to put that work in.
To elaborate on that, I think one other key component in all of this is that it doesn't necessarily serve you to be a wallflower. No. There's some research done on Dr. Robert Cialdini's work. It's essentially the notion is what is focal is causal. And essentially what that means is what people see is what they perceive. So if you are going to work hard, make sure your supervisor sees it. Make sure that you're getting acknowledged for the things that you're getting put in, because ultimately people will attribute the success or failure of certain things you're working on based on their perception of you and based on what they see from you. So if they see you on your phone, on Instagram or something like that, and even though you never take out your phone, the one moment you took it out was the one moment somebody actually saw you on your phone, that is what that's their perception of you. And that's going to be, and it's going to be very difficult to overcome that. But if they see you working hard and delivering on your reports, that's also critical too, because that's going to be what they perceive of you as well.
Agreed. Yeah, I totally agree, Garrett. And again, you hit a really great point there about not being that wallflower and be willing to make those impacts. And again, part of the guidance that I give interns when they say, hey, what should we be doing on our time here? One, as an intern, you need to learn. And whether you're being an intern or a new employee, come in and make an impact every day. A positive impact, right? Not a negative impact. Come in and make a positive impact every day. And don't think that it's got to be this big, grandiose change that you're going to drive the organization, because you're not going to. Come in and think about small incremental steps on a daily basis. Making those small improvements every single day, and not only what you do, but what you can do to help those around you also make those small incremental impacts. And Garrett said it, much, much more meaningful to have a consistent path of meaningful impacts every day, consistently every day, versus I'm going to come in once a month, I'm going to make a big bang. Then I'm going to go stagnant. I'm going to come in once a month, make a big bang, I'm going to go stagnant. Not nearly as effective, and have been proven more and more times again. That is not a path to, not only a path to sustainability, not a path to success.
That's awesome. And what about building rapport with people outside of your department? What about, like, I'm on the job in my internship, maybe I think I can only spend time with my inner circle of who I work in my department with. Have you ever experienced people going outside of the department and getting positive results, or just building positive relationships with people outside of that? Do you encourage that?
Yeah, no, it's a mandatory, right? I mean, it has to be insistent. So where you are in the organization, you are dependent, your department is dependent on a multitude of other people. So here on my division, I run anything and everything to do with the revenue side of it. So it's going to do me no good to bring in revenue, to bring in new sales, if I've not fostered good relationships with my COO, and I clearly understand these are the types of opportunities that we should bring it in, so that COO can then operationalize those things and actually implement them and then do the delivery on it. So having that cross-functional exposure is just an outright mandatory. So as interns come to us and new sales reps come to us and new marketing interns come to us, it's a mandatory requirement. Not only know and understand what your job is and what your specific department does, also know and understand what departments you have to rely on in order for them to do their job, so that you're delivering the right thing so they can best support you, and vice versa. It's been very encouraging that the support team comes over and helps us on the revenue side best identify what customers are most profitable for us, what customers are the best engagement for us, what customers are the most difficult for us and the least profitable. So we encourage it on all sides of the organization. So whether you are in revenue, finance, operations, or IT, having that cross-functional understanding of how we all operate together, everybody needs each other in order for the entire organization to work. So to solely work in your silo, never ever going to work. An entire team working together toward a common theme and a common understanding where everybody knows what and how they contribute to that is a path to success every single time.
That's so fascinating. That makes me think of a question I'd love to ask the students really quick. And this is just more of a testament into, have you done your research, or have you started looking at your research? If you've got an internship already lined up, or if you've got a job already lined up, or maybe you've had an internship or a job in the past, what department were you in, and then what departments did you interact with or that were essentially dependent on you for them to do their jobs? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn how much you've studied on this. And maybe if you don't have a job or an internship yet, but you're working towards it, what do you know about the department you would like to get into, and then what other departments you'll interact with for your work? Post that knowledge in the comment section. I'd love to learn about it, because I think that student to student sharing knowledge can give a lot of great insight, so then they can learn from each other. And then two, I think it can also open up potentially eyes for any students that maybe don't have that job or internship yet. They can look at what other students are saying and they say, okay, cool. I didn't realize the accounting department really actively worked with, let's say, the marketing department to achieve XYZ goal, because I thought they were totally separate, paths. Because maybe I'm a student, I think, okay, marketing degree, accounting degree, very different. But you can now start seeing the interconnectivity of how a whole business works and how you essentially fit in the puzzle piece of the entire company. So post that in the comment section. I'd love to learn about what research you've done on your department that you are pursuing work in, or that you have worked in, and how you interact with other departments and how they leverage your services from the work you were doing. David, the last question I'd love to ask is, how can you as a student communicate your goals to your supervisor? How can you make that most impactful to make it mutually beneficial? Like, you don't want to come in and feel transactional, like, hey, I'm expecting to be promoted at XYZ period in time, or I'd like to be doing this type of work. You don't want to come off as entitled, but you also want to communicate your goals. How do you encourage students or young people to go about encouraging or communicating those goals to the supervisor or boss?
Yeah, so I would say, it starts at the interview process. I would even encourage, as people are going out through their interview, is to ask, what does career development look like here? What does feedback look like in this organization? What does engagement look like as me as a new person coming in this organization? How and when do we get performance reviews, and what does that, what does that engagement look like? And, I know for the organizations that I've been part of and for the organizations that I'm now, privileged enough to lead, part of a ongoing review is, do you understand all of the career aspirations of everybody that reports up to you? If the answer is no, you need to go find those answers out. One of the most important things that I can do as a leader is thoroughly understand everybody that works with me and up through my organization is, what are their career aspirations? And it's twofold, and it's certainly self-serving. So if I know I've got somebody that wants to be, eventually they're a salesperson today, but they eventually want to get into marketing and eventually be a CMO, there are certain job roles and responsibilities that I can start to cater towards them to help them hit those aspirations and goals. And again, self-serving is, if I'm demonstrating and showing in good faith and in good earnest that I'm invested in their career because I want to help them grow and mature and develop and eventually be in the role that they want to be, by nature, I'm going to get the best performance out of that person, because I'm showing that I care about them. I'm showing that I'm invested in their career. I'm showing that I support their career. In that same tune, they're going to give me the best, so I continue to go through and help and support those efforts across the board. So I do it because I think it's the right thing to do. And as I moved my career, all I wanted was my bosses to understand what I wanted to do so they could help me hit my career aspirations and goals. I want to now be able to deliver that exact same thing for not only the people that I have working up through me, but also then charging them, saying your primary role and responsibility as a leader is to understand how you develop your people so that they can hit their career aspirations. One, we want the good ones to stay. And then also, if for some reason you get to the point where somebody is advancing their career and we just don't have an opportunity for them, wouldn't you rather have an open dialogue and discussion of, I really want to do this. We don't have that role in our company here. how can you help me progressively attain that, David, as you continue to then support for where and how my replacement is coming in. So it's got to be a pretty meaningful discussion on both sides, but it does start with the interview process. And if you get a sense during the interview process that they don't do career development, they don't do career pathing, the only time that they give feedback is during the annual performance review, that's a clear indicator that they're not just as invested in your career as you want them to be, and they're not going to be able to support you. Now, that being said, there's one person that's responsible for your career, and that's you. So it goes back to, I think it was Garrett's first question, what did my career path look like and how did I get to where I wanted to be? I always had a vision that I wanted to be a senior leader in an organization somewhere. I didn't know where, didn't know how. I certainly didn't think that I would fall in the insurance space, but I always knew that I wanted to be a senior leader. Having that same kind of career aspirations for you is just as important as you're now starting to go through that. So I'd say starts with that interview process, starts with that cultivating and make sure that they understand that you're looking for not only come in here and work this job here today, but you have aspirations to grow and develop as a leader. Again, whether that be or grow and develop as a business person, not just in the leadership roles and not just in the individual contributor roles.
That's awesome. David, thank you for being here. This wisdom was fantastic. This insight was excellent. I think our students are going to get a lot out of this workshop. I think they've gotten a ton out of this workshop this evening. I really appreciate you being here. Last question is, how can our students learn about you? How can they connect with you? I know I've gotten them all on LinkedIn, but is there any way that they could learn more about you or connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to get a hold of me is certainly through LinkedIn. I do get on LinkedIn daily. So if you've already provided them with my LinkedIn contact and my LinkedIn page, that is going to be a great way. And I would love to engage them and figure out what I can do to help them set their career path in place and help them understand what their aspirations look like and eventually attain them.
That's awesome. David, thank you for being so generous. I really appreciate you and your time. Students, thank you all for being here this evening. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your semester, and I'm hoping to see you in our program next semester. See you, everybody.